Welcome. Welcome to the 25th anniversary of the Mazza Museum and our 25th celebration. What a 25 years it has been. I'm founding director Jerry Mallett of the museum. I am now, we'll get to this in a moment, curator. And thrilled, but we will come back to that. I want to make an announcement first, and that is you were given, when you came in, a little slip of paper. It's our Fun Day Sunday. It's our Mazza Fun Day Sunday. It's the first Monday of, Sunday, pardon me. Yeah, that's why we call it Fun Day Sunday. We hold it on Mondays. The first Sunday of every month. It is themed, and you know, I think of it as sort of like a marvelous 16th century European fair. There's things going on all over the place. Some at different times, and you get a program, you get storytelling, you get, in this case, something very special, which I'll mention in a second. But there's art activities. It's for the entire family. This is not something where you drop off your child. Got it? We've designed it for the family. The whole idea is to have something for the whole family to enjoy together. Some fathers got a little too excited about the art activity, and we couldn't get them to the storytelling because they wanted to finish their art activity. Okay, so it's something everyone can enjoy. It is October 7th. We are featuring this time the Benders. Their first book, they come from Waldo, Ohio. They're very well known. This is their only first picture book, photo art. It is incredible. Well, I don't know. I wouldn't call it photo art. It's computer-generated art. But it is just a fantastic book. It's called Ribbit. And it's one of those books that look at what fun you can have by changing the images as you go. They are well known in the advertising area. If you've looked at magazines recently, you undoubtedly have seen some of their work. There's several of them coming, and they're dressing as characters, as frogs. And the whole theme is frogs. So if you don't like frogs, I suppose you ought to stay home. But it will be wonderful. It is free. It is free. What makes it free? We just received a wonderful grant from the Community Foundation for 3 years to do Fun Day Sundays, that pays for about half of our Fun Day Sunday. And then we have wonderful sponsors that come in and pay for the other half, of which you'll recognize names on the programs if you come. So we really thank the Finley Foundation, and we thank you other folks for helping to keep it free so everybody can come. Okay, now then, back to I am now curator. Now, did you hear me? And please listen. Jerry is not retiring. Got me? I am changing positions. And for this year, I'm still full-time. Next year, I'll be half-time curator. I am doing what I love to do, what I've wanted to do, work with our wonderful art, get it so much better organized than we've been able to do. And so I'm loving it. I'm loving it. People say, well, why are you? Well, I'm loving it for one thing, of course. Why? Good grief, look. Look at me. You say, oh, well, you have lots of years. Oh, yes, yes, yes. dear God, I'm pushing 70. It's about time. That's one thing. But it's also about time for someone else. I've had people that are so concerned of how I'm taking this. I'm thrilled how I'm taking this. Number one, 2 reasons. Number one is I got to pick the person. I picked him 15 years ago. He didn't know it then. And he's been in training for 15 years. That's long enough for anybody. He's ready. He's ready with some wonderful ideas, some exciting new ideas. It's just, I am thrilled. I am thrilled. And also, number 2, I am one of the few people who can say that the person following me is my best friend. Few people can say that. I give you my best friend, Benjamin E. Sapp.
There will be in the future a true celebration of Jerry and what he's done, and you all will be invited to that. Before I introduce our guest speakers today, I would like to acknowledge Dr. Mazza and Maxine. If you could please stand and be recognized. It's always great to have you here in attendance. Thank you. I would like to welcome you today to the Mazza Museum's 25th anniversary celebration event. What an event this has turned out to be. There's been a buzz about this event for months, truly months. Matter of fact, I can't remember this much excitement about an artist visit as far back as when we had Jan Brett here. So we are truly blessed to have our speakers here today. Robert was born in Pinckney, Michigan, Matthew Reinhart in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Robert's father was a mason and carpenter, so he learned, or perhaps inherited, the ability to create with his hands. Matthew's father, on the other hand, was an oral surgeon. Matthew was convinced to study biology to prepare for medical school, but found out that medicine was not his calling. We're grateful for this. Robert and Matthew both studied at Pratt Institute in New York. Today they work together in a studio in New York City, and they love making books that we love collecting and sharing with everyone we meet. Please help me welcome Robert Sabuda and Matthew Reinhart, the real reason why you're here.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Holy cow.
Don't you think we look alike?
No, we're the Three Stooges.
I was going to tear up there in that introduction.
Three Stooges.
I was starting to get a little teary.
Well, thank you very much for having us here. We just had a wonderful luncheon, and somebody said to me, how many times have you been to the Mazza before? And I was thrilled and I guess a little surprised that I couldn't even remember, because I've been here so many times and so happy to be here. Yet again, I feel like it's almost sort of a second family for us. So Matthew and I are going to do a little show. We're going to talk about our work. We're going to talk about why we do the kind of work that we do. And we'll sort of go from there. Is there any way to bring these lights down a little bit here in the front, Ben? Oh, excellent.
Can we get a little bit more, please?
Okay.
There we go.
Very good.
There, I'll fall off the stage.
Holy
Meanwhile.
Cow. Whoa.
A long time ago, in a state not so far away.
Ta-da.
Wait, this isn't Star Wars.
No.
What is this?
But could this shirt be any more 70s? Do you see this collar on this shirt? I'm sure my mother made that shirt for me.
He doesn't like to.
60s or 70s. So as Ben had mentioned, my father was a mason when I was a boy, so I did grow up building things. I loved to make things. I was just a maker from a very early age. Also at lunch there was someone at my table, a contemporary artist who makes things out of pipe cleaners. For those of you who don't know what pipe cleaners are, they're fuzzy sticks of wire that are way too dangerous to use in the classroom anymore. But I loved pipe cleaners because I could make sculptures and I made books and...
Poke your eyes out.
Go ahead. What?
Yeah, poke your eyes out.
You don't want to poke your eyes out. But my mother was a secretary at Ford Motor Company, and she worked in the personnel department. Some of you may have heard this. And she knew I had an interest in pop-up books. And so when anyone ever got fired from Ford Motor Company, she would bring home their manila filing folder that held all their information home to me, and I'd make pop-ups out of it. So I had support from an early age interest in making pop-ups. I also have one of the earliest ones that I've ever made. For those of you, hopefully you can see, we're such a big group here today. I probably made this. People say, well, when did you know you were going to be an artist? I've been an artist my whole life. I don't ever recall a time when I wasn't drawing or painting or folding or building something. And so this is actually the only pop-up I have from my childhood, and the reason why I have it is because I made it for a friend, obviously for Valentine's Day, many years ago, and she recently sent it back to me and said, I've enjoyed it all these years, and I thought you would enjoy having it back now. And I have, because my parents were kind of hippies, so they didn't really keep anything sort of mine. It was like,
didn't they smoke everything?
Yeah, we'll love it in our memories, man. We'll just love it to death, and they didn't keep anything. So I have one pop-up left from my childhood.
I'm in trouble for that one.
No.
Okay. Okay, also my parents had no taste in choosing
Look at those
clothes.
pants.
This is a young me with some very nice pants. I like Robert. I also was an artist my whole life. I don't think I ever remember not drawing or building or making things. And it's really funny because actually I have an uncle who was quite a popular, a very successful painter in the 80s. His name was John Cassiri. He did very, very large photorealistic paintings of women's midsections in underwear. And very popular, especially in France. And he told me, when I was young, he said, you'll never be an artist your whole life because you can't be one until you die. And I thought that was really kind of depressing, actually. And I never agreed with him, ever. So I just kept drawing and just kept making things. Now, like Robert said, or like earlier, my father, he didn't want me to be an artist. He thought that there was no way that I could make money. He was excited about the work that I did, but he didn't want me to struggle. And I didn't really want to struggle either. So I studied biology in college. I had always had a really keen interest in zoology, animals, and dinosaurs, paleontology. And so my dad said, well, why don't you go into medicine? Because you have a lot of interest in biology, and you'll be able to make money. They had especially thought that I'd be good at being a plastic surgeon because I was so artistic. I said, well, if you can add another nose or eyeball to a face, that might be really cool. So maybe I wouldn't have been a good plastic surgeon. But luckily, I was smart enough at the time to decide not to go to medical school, despite the fact that I had gotten in. So I'm kind of smartish. And I was lucky enough to convince my dad to let me go to Pratt Institute in New York City and study industrial design, which is for toy design, because I love toys. But we'll get into that later on. This is my little sister. I have to put her in pictures or in any presentation because she gets mad at me if I don't. So that's my sister Erin. Our work.
This is one of the books that really started us on a sort of a big trajectory in the world of pop-ups and movable books. I had been working in picture books for several years in the early 90s, late 80s and early 90s, And I was working with a lot of paper. I was doing paper mosaics and cut paper collage. I was having a great time working with paper. So I thought to myself, well, how can I take that a step further? Why don't I start working in 3 dimensions in paper? So I thought about pop-up books. I'd had pop-up books as a boy and made them, obviously, but I didn't know how to make them now as an adult. So after attending Pratt, I sort of taught myself how to make pop-ups. I would look down at books and look in between the pages to see how things worked, and came up with the paper mechanisms on my own. And the first book that I ever created, first pop-up book I ever created, was The Christmas Alphabet in 1994. Now, one of the reasons why we sort of include this particular book in the slide presentation is because as you walk around the Mazda, you see a huge variety of artwork. Artists work differently, they think differently, they work in different materials. One of the reasons why this book was so strange when it came out in 1994 is because all of the pop-ups were white. When you look at pop-up books today and you see an unusual pop-up book, you're not surprised if they're white. But in 1994, no book had ever looked like that for children. No book had white pop-ups. No book ever cost $20, and this book cost $20 in 1994. So the publishing house really secretly thought that this book was going to be a disaster, but they didn't tell me that. They kept saying, oh, it's going to be great, it's going to be wonderful, but they were anticipating a major failure with this particular book. Fortunately, they completely underestimated the book-loving world, because I'm happy to say it went on to be successful for us and really start our studio. I continued to work with colors, paper in 3 dimensions as well. This is from Kwanzaa celebration the next year. And it was really the beginning of my work and Matthew's work and our studio's work, working with cut paper collage, making large sheets of colored paper, cutting out the pieces to make artwork that would appear on pop-ups.
One of the reasons why we like to use cut paper collage, we feel like when we're engineering in paper. Okay, we're starting to build the pop-ups first in paper. And then when we go to make the artwork, we also use paper again to make the color and apply the details. So we feel like we're continuing the tradition of paper throughout the project.
This is the first big quote-unquote book that came out of our studio, and we came up with this idea, if we were working with classic stories that had more text, to have little side flaps that would have pop-ups in them as well, which would allow us to tell a much longer story than what we had been used to doing earlier.
We could hide all those words those many, many words inside the books.
We started to also work with unusual materials. This particular pop-up here from Wizard of Oz, the cyclone spins around by using string here at the bottom. So we started to experiment more, and that's what all illustrators and artists do. They experiment more with different things, and can we use paper here? Can we use string? Can we use a piece of plastic to get it to do what we would like it to do?
And this was actually one of the first books that we used computers to make the actual die lines. The lines are used to make the cutout pieces of a pop-up. It was really tough for us because I was learning how to use the computer, and I had to come up with sort of the